Hello, and welcome to Digital Decode with Qhala. My name is Laura Walubengo, and I am your host for this podcast, where we'll be diving into anything that has to do with technology in Africa. And the aim of this podcast is for us to be able to decode anything that's happening digitally on the continent. As you know, the future of this continent is steeped in technology, and so you better be listening. What we're trying to do here is make sure that you're enlightened and inspired. Hello, and welcome to Digital Decode with Qhala. My name is Laura Walubengo, and I am your host today. Now, on this podcast, we discuss tech and tech innovation and break it down in a way that matters. And today we have a very special guest with us. His name is Bernard Chiira. Who is Bernard? Bernard is the director of Innovate Now, which is Africa's first assistive technology accelerator. And that is just as important as it sounds. And he's also the founder of AT4D, which is Assistive Technologies for Disability Trust. And without further ado, I'm going to head on to Bernard so he can explain exactly what he does, aside from the fancy names. Hi, Bernard. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Very welcome. I'm very happy to have you on the podcast today.
I'm very happy to be maybe the first podcast this year, or the second.
There we go. First, almost made it. So tell me about the companies that you run. What exactly is AT4D?
Yeah. Okay, so before we get to AT4D, let's get Innovate Now out of the way first, because that's what I started with.
Okay.
So 5 years ago, around 2019, we launched Innovate Now. It's a startup accelerator, and we focus on assistive technology. And you can think of assistive technology as any technology system or product or service that enables primarily people with disabilities, but actually everyone as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard to imagine sometimes, but anything from glasses to mobility products like wheelchairs, or to software like accessibility features on a phone, all that is assistive tech. So why did we launch this? So before then, I was working in the mainstream startup ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And we could see how basically startups challenge the status quo. And they say we can do it better, faster, cheaper than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at disability, most of the time, people don't think it's an innovation issue. Yet, there's a lot that can be done. So this was a project to imagine how might innovation and entrepreneurship build products and services and systems that serve people with disabilities. And why? Because for someone with a disability, assistive tech is a very basic human need and also a human right. Without my crutches, I may not be able to move.
Yeah.
So it's right there next to full shelter and clothing. But actually, 90% of people who need assistive products, they don't have access to them. And you may be asking, like, 90% of what?
Yeah, I was actually asking that in my head.
So imagine this. So the number of people with disabilities world over, it's more than 1.5 billion people. In Africa, it's more than 200 million people. So you can imagine if 90% of them who need the assistive tech don't have access to it, what does that mean for their education, their work, their independence, their well-being? It just means that they are basically unfairly disadvantaged.
Let me ask you before you go further, just to sort of break that down. So one of the things you said is when people look at persons with disability, they don't see the need for innovation. What do they see?
Yeah.
Just from what you've observed.
I mean, from my observation, naturally people, especially, if it's maybe their first interaction with disability, the natural, the most instinctive thing to do is oishe, poor person, how can I help this person?
Yeah.
So for many decades, disability has been looked at from a charity lens. And I'm not saying it's bad to help people with disabilities, but it's not entirely a charity issue. Um, and so you have to start looking at it from other lenses. For example, lenses of what does it mean from an equity perspective, fairness, justice. You know, what does it mean from an economics perspective in terms of participation, health? So this was a premise around why we needed to do innovation for assistive technology, so that when somebody has this very basic product, now you're not discussing whether they can do it. You're discussing how they're going to do it, how they're going to go to school, how they're going to go to work, how are they going to meaningfully participate. You're almost giving now an equal chance for this individual. And because of Innovate Now, which by the way we launched, it was a great partnership, still is. We worked with a number of amazing partners, including AMREF, Global Disability Innovation Hub, and Kilimanjaro Blind Trust Africa. And because it was really like a moonshot, like this was the first in Africa. I'm sure you know so many innovation hubs in Kenya, but tell me one that focuses on disability or assistive tech. So it was like unheard of 5 years ago. And we went ahead to make this the premier program across the continent for any innovator who is solving for that market. And just to give you a few numbers, we've helped to launch more than 45 startups to market who are all in assistive tech from across 11 countries. And we've built a community of more than 100 plus innovators or entrepreneurs in that segment.
Now, I'd like you to break down exactly what assistive tech is. But before we do that, you've explained what people think or what people's perceptions of disability is. For you, what was the beginning in your mind to change from the Woshe mentality to no, we need equal footing here?
Yeah. Okay, so for me, I think it's both at a personal level and also my lived experience, like being someone who has a disability as well. So it's interesting because I never planned to work like at the intersection of disability and technology. Like this was not my plan. It's something that just happened and the progression of my work. So those worlds collided, which was something fantastic for me because I've always thought maybe I should do something to give back because not so many people get the opportunities like to go all the way from, childhood to achieving most of the milestones people have in life. And it's the normal things. People with disabilities, they don't want to be superheroes. They just want to, have an equal opportunity to live a good life. They have aspirations for education, for meaningful work, for family, getting married. Some people assume, yeah, you're getting married. Yeah, so for me, I've grown up in a family where some kids had disabilities, some don't. I come from a big family of 7 kids, and I'm among 4 who had a disability. So from a young age, it was something that I guess at the family level was there, and my parents really empowered us, all of us. Like nobody was, there are some very sad situations where if your child is born and they have a disability, the family refuses to accept. It's almost like they are ashamed.
Yeah.
And they would hide away that child, or they would not give them the same opportunity. So I think we must really give it up to like parents, and sometimes not even parents, because sometimes you might be born in a family where your parents were not there, so you were raised by the community or like school. Yeah, so for me, that's I think the first place that really shaped me in terms of how to think about having a disability. As a kid, I actually never knew I had a disability, to be honest. Until I started doing things that were considered dangerous for someone like me.
Like what?
Like trying to ride a bike.
Yeah.
So I have a condition which is like a brittle bone disease. So with that condition, and mine, like I got it when I was very young. So your bones basically break. And it can be severe or mild. So So if you have a condition like that, riding bikes is not one of the things that your parents will
Risk
allow you to
factors.
do. But I was always like, because you see, as a child, by the anyone who comes into this world, nobody is conditioned or born with mentality A or mentality B. The environment shapes you.
Shapes, yeah.
Yeah. So for me, that kind of shaped my approach. And then I went to a special school in primary school. And by special, I don't like the word special, but in this country we have special needs education,
Yeah.
which in my view should actually be rebranded, because the education we go through is the same.
It's the same.
It's just that they are doing the right thing. They are accommodating learners with disabilities. They are training teachers to be able to deliver learning. But going to boarding school from nursery to class 8 also shaped me a lot, because this school, and the reason I went here is because the regular school said, we cannot handle this. So access to education, very hard for people with disabilities.
You were in boarding school from nursery?
Yes. And I went to a school called Joytown, special school, primary school. It's in Thika. And it's a school that basically integrates education and rehabilitation care for children with disabilities.
Wow.
Yes. And they have from nursery to high school. If you want to spend a good chunk of your life there, you can. So for me, it was from primary from nursery to primary school. But it's there where, again, exposure is important. So my mom, for example, because they used to come for visiting, they used to come to the school.
Yeah.
Then you actually see how other parents have kids who have disabilities. So I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And when people don't have exposure about disabilities, I mean, you might have very unfounded biases. You know, you might think you're the only one. But in this school, yeah, and they don't treat you special there. Everyone has a disability. So you are trained basically to take care of yourself, to learn. So I became a very independent person because of that from a very young age. Yes, because we used to basically be trained for life. Like, we used to do our own chores. We used to clean our dorms. We used to wash our clothes. And this is from like class 4, 5.
That's good though.
And leadership also came. Like, there were prefects. There were... I remember I used to ring the bell at some point. I was a timekeeper.
You came on time, so I believe that.
So that shaped me in a way to also the acceptance, and to know, by the way, there are other kids who have disability, to such an extent that I was very outgoing when I was in primary school. That school, it also taught people to explore beyond the academics. So we had things like music, art.
Nice.
So I started singing in like class 4, joined the choir, did duets. So did a lot of like public speaking as well. So it shaped me slowly. Then after primary school, I refused to go to... I was called to the high school of the school, but I said I don't want to go there. Because at some point, you now realize that you're in a bubble. The world outside there is not...
It's different.
It's different. So
it's not accommodating.
I just said, and I asked my parents a simple question. Is there a university for people with disabilities? And they told me no. So then I said, why should I go to a high school of people with just kids with disabilities? I want to face those challenges now, so that I know how to deal with them later. And that's basically what happened. I went to a regular high school. I went to Aquinas High School. And surprisingly, they had a very accommodating mindset.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then now when you interact with, people get shocked of very things to me which are very normal. I'm like, why is he surprised? Because there's those expectations that people have or don't have for people with disabilities. So, but when they see you doing things that they probably thought you couldn't do, then you start challenging the mindset. So I've always grown up like that. And then always finding myself in positions of leadership from, prefect in primary school. In high school, I don't think I got into that. In fact, I was hell-bent on going to campus. So I really focused. I was a bookworm in high school. But then finally I made it to Strath, did my degree there, did my master's there.
Nice.
And then I got back into the music choir. We had a very serious choir. We produced an album when I was there. But also, but actually in primary school, we also did 2 albums. So, and then now, okay, so, and then I started working there. After campus, we have a lab there. It's called the iLab. I was one amongst the first groups of people to work in iLab. And then I got into the incubation. I was the second manager of the incubator at Strath. And that's now where I started doing work around entrepreneurship and tech, supporting young people to think, how can technology change lives? Like, how can you build things products that solve the problem?
Yeah.
And so I have been privileged to work in the innovation ecosystem before. Not about disability, just
general.
Working and looking at technology as an enabler for many things. And then in 2019, boom, things change. I move out of Strath and I launch Innovate Now. And we do it for 5 years. And then we realize we're going to do this long term. So we established AT4D to extend the work of Innovate Now, but also to be very focused on disability innovation, because we've seen that it's not just about technology for people with disabilities alone. If you actually use the principles of inclusive design in designing any product, it doesn't have to be an assistive product. It actually becomes a product that people will love because it's not biased for only one use case.
Yeah.
So I talk about designing products for the normal, what we know. But the reason some products have very good user experience and some don't is because if you use inclusive design, you're going to look at that product and say, how many people can use this?
Yeah.
Would a blind person, for example, be able to use this technology? And if not, what are you going to do about it? So in disability innovation, we use that and we apply it to assistive tech, but also a lot of the times we see products that start out as assistive technology, but they become mainstream tech. I don't know whether people are a lot of the times not aware of that because it's something they use every day. But if you go back to the history, how was this product designed? You'll be shocked. For example, if I'm sure you use captions a lot or like subtitles.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because when I'm on Instagram or TikTok, I literally have no volume.
Yeah.
So if there are no captions, I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah.
If there's a nice music in the background, I missed out.
Or maybe something it's in a different language. So you can actually watch a movie in Hindi.
Yeah.
If it has captions.
Yeah.
But guess what? Captions are actually designed so that people who are hard of hearing or deaf can also consume that content. That was a primary use case.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And there are countless others, by the way.
But nowadays, nobody watches anything without those captions.
And that kind of demystifies this idea that assistive tech is a niche. It's only for this small group of people, which by the way is not small, as I've told you.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people around the world. But the challenges we face, especially around convincing funders to invest in this program, or corporates, or people who are not typically doing enough around this. Even government sometimes, because the way people make financial decisions sometimes is about how many, they will start with how many people are we talking about? And then they will be like, and it's interesting because even in our leadership as a country, if you look at Kenya got the disability law in 2003. But there was a very interesting catalyst for that. So the then president, Kibaki, got into a very serious accident. He was actually sworn in on a wheelchair. I don't know whether
I
you
think I
remember.
remember that. Yeah, yeah.
And then they realized this president cannot move anywhere. And now there was the question, what are we doing? This is serious. Like, so when Kibaki came into power, we enacted a law that year, the Persons with Disability Act 2003.
Wow.
And that is
I didn't know
what
that.
has helped to push the disability agenda a lot in the country. And then now when we got the new constitution in 2010, disability rights are actually protected under the Kenyan constitution.
But
Because
that's on paper.
that's on paper.
That's on paper.
Yeah.
So give me some examples of assistive tech, and then
Fantastic.
we can get down to that.
Okay, so I'll start with the ones you would probably, they're obvious. So if you see someone with a mobility product like a wheelchair, that's assistive tech. It may not look very techy. You know, people
Yeah.
think tech and they think very advanced things.
Yeah, computer science. Yeah.
Although now you do actually have wheelchair. A wheelchair is not just a wheelchair. There are some wheelchairs that are motorized.
Yeah.
Some are manual. And there's a lot of advancements in the
Mm.
area of assistive technology. That's an example. I'll give you another example, which is very mainstream. And it has also broken the barriers of acceptability. Nobody looks at you strange if you are using it. Glasses. So there are a lot of people that use glasses and they don't consider themselves as people with disabilities.
Mm.
But they actually are, especially if they are not for aesthetics.
Yeah.
Like if you really can't see without those glasses, you have a disability. You have a visual impairment.
You know, the Star newspaper says when you wear glasses, you're very smart. So we're smart people with
Yeah.
disability.
Exactly. But you see, now glasses became also the fashion world helped to make glasses more acceptable,
Mm.
fashionable. Because now we have sunglasses. They're just for, and then they look cool. That's the other thing.
Mm.
Unfortunately, a lot of assistive products, they are not designed to look nice, because the people behind that, they're not thinking about, I'm designing for a customer and this customer has preferences and they need it to be. So these are just like two examples of like mainstream assistive products.
tech.
But we have assistive products
Mm.
or technologies that are digital. It's like, and I'll give you another example of something that has also gone mainstream now. It's on every phone and it's also probably now on every laptop.
Mhm.
So when you go to your phone, if it's a smartphone that is, and you go to settings, you will see accessibility.
Mm. Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you check under your phone settings, you see accessibility. What does it mean? It means basically there are settings that can allow you to manipulate that device in other ways.
Mm.
Like for example, if you're visually impaired, you can actually operate that device without looking at the screen. And so if you turn on accessibility, it can turn every command on the phone into an audio format. Basically, if you will touch and then you'll hear the sound of what have you done.
Mm. Mm.
This is how visually impaired people and blind people use
phones.
the phone.
Mm.
There are things like different formats of like texts. You can convert text to speech,
Mm.
for example, or you can right now on WhatsApp, and this is something they added. You can actually have a WhatsApp voice note.
Oh.
It's not. A voice note is very useful for someone who can't see,
Yeah.
because they will just listen to the message.
Yeah.
And this is mainstream tech, but this is assistive tech. And the companies building these products are your big tech companies, Apple, Google.
Mm.
And they are not doing it because it's a good Oishe thing. They are building a product that everybody can use,
Mm.
and especially people with disabilities. So those are like some of the mainstream, like they've gone mainstream. But then you have, for example, there's a technology that has come through one of the entrepreneurs that we've supported, yeah, and it's in the area of sign language. So for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, some prefer sign language as the first language of communication. And so you have to have an interpreter all the time.
Yeah.
But sometimes the challenge is that in some environments, it becomes very hard to get an interpreter. So there's a company called Signverse, and what they've done, they have created a digital sign language interpreter. And that's for use cases mostly around content that is on screens. That, say now an advert, we see a lot of adverts being done by companies, but those companies ignore that community. They'll not do an advert in, it will be all audio or all
It's not
visual.
even considered.
So now what they've done, like if say Safaricom or Kenya West is doing a promo, they can actually create signed content where there's a digital avatar that signs in Kenyan Sign Language. And that's a company that's using AI and avatar technology.
Interesting.
And that's an assistive technology. But if you look at its applications, I mean, multiple use cases. There's another famous one. It's not from our program, but it's on, it's a company called Be My Eyes. And it was started by basically this idea of, if you're visually impaired, then you've gone, say, to a supermarket. You want to pick a product, but you need to read some nitty-gritties like expiry date.
Yeah.
How would you do it? So these companies created a platform where you can dial in a sighted person at any time to read. And people volunteer for this.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I thought it was a paid service.
So it actually began as like an open source movement. And they made this service free to the users. But now as technology advanced, they basically now replaced that with AI. So now
you don't
they
need a
don't have to
person.
rely on a person. And now it's called Be My AI. And basically what it does is it's able to use the maybe the camera of the phone to actually read and give that feedback to the user in audio. And it's one of the most, I think it's in now 15 languages, like it's
Nice.
gone. But one of the challenging things with assistive technology companies is what you've asked. I thought it should be free. And it's a tricky area because seriously, I shouldn't have to pay for my legs, for example. Because see, everyone should have legs and they should walk. But if I have crutches or a wheelchair, they're like my legs.
Yeah.
So why, like from an ethical human rights perspective, everybody has a right to assistive technology. It's not a privilege. It's a human right. Actually, even by law, there's something called the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. And this is a UN treaty that every member of the UN states is subject to. It's international law. And it was the first UN treaty, by the way, to gain global acceptance to protect the rights of people with disabilities. And access to assistive technology is one of them. So it's not, so from that perspective, you can say it's only fair that it should be free. But here's a catch. Someone has to pay. Because there's basically somebody who's going to build that product.
Yeah.
So it's going to cost something to build that
Of
product.
course, yeah.
And if they're going to build a really good product, they're going to invest a lot of innovation, technology. So you find that what happens, like in developed economies, you'll find government pays for it, for example.
Oh.
Like you can literally get a wheelchair courtesy of the government. And essentially, this is how it should be because
According to
it's a
the
human
treaty.
right.
Yeah.
But then the idea here is you should have options. What say I don't like the one that the government gave me? Or there's a new one, there's a better one in the market.
Yeah.
Will I go back to government and say, give me the new one?
No.
So here's a catch. If you empower people with disabilities to make their own decisions, to have agency in decisions, because traditionally assistive products, the decisions around them are made by other people, not the user. It's the doctor who prescribes it like medicine and says you go to the physio, you'll get a pair of crutches.
But now, if you look at AT4D and the work that you've already done with Innovate now, what sort of impact are you creating? I mean, it's been 5 years that you say that you've been there, and I think you have a lot of plans even for this year.
Yeah.
So what kind of impact would you say you're making, considering you have all these startups coming up with different kinds of tech and locally done, specifically for our needs here, which are many.
Yeah.
So how would you describe the impact that you've had already?
Yeah.
And I think there's some programs that you want to launch this year that are quite crucial.
Yeah. So when you think about the impact that we make, because we happen to be working in innovation and entrepreneurship as a focus. And so our impact really is tied to the success of the startups we are supporting, because there is a multiply effect we are after. Not only do we want these assistive products to be more affordable, more accessible, to have different options, we actually want the country, the continent, to think of assistive technology as a sector, or like as a contributor to economic development. Why? There is an industry side of assistive products. It's a value chain all the way from manufacturing, distribution, retail, marketing, services. But because of neglecting this area, there's no local industry for assistive tech that can meet the needs. And you see the needs around assistive technology are also very context-based most of the time.
Yeah.
So the impact of our work is to say, if it's a wheelchair, we're going to make a wheelchair built for purpose that can thrive in this environment, and it will have higher standards of durability, safety. And the other big impact we're having is changing the narrative, the mindset. Because to be honest, working in assistive tech might not come across as sexy as I'm in fintech. Yeah?
Yeah.
But we want people to know this is a sector for opportunities. You can build actually a company that serves this population. And the possibility of even scaling is even higher, despite all the challenges we face. Why? Disability is universal.
Yeah.
You will find people with these needs everywhere. One of the companies that we've supported, and they're now in the UK and also in Austria, is a company called Hope Tech. They are building wearable technology for blind and visually impaired people.
Interesting.
And this technology, basically what it does, they call it the sixth sense. And the idea is to give that person more situational awareness for navigation and for safety. So it's something that has sensors. It can detect like overhead objects, or like if it's a clear path, and it uses vibrations, or this is called haptic technology. It's what you'll find on a maybe PlayStation joystick. You can program vibrations for certain actions. And then they use computer vision, because we are in an age where we have self-driving cars, by the way.
Yeah.
So if a car can see, why shouldn't people who are visually impaired? Anyway, so the example is that we supported this company from like coming with just a prototype to launching this product at a global scale. And now we have a program. The accelerator is still on. And we've just launched this past week the call for our 10th cohort. We've done 9 cohorts
Nice.
this far. So what we usually do is we make this program open and free for assistive tech innovators across the continent. And it's simple. You go on our website or on our socials, you fill in a form. And then if you're selected, then you get to join a cohort of change makers around the continent who are building innovations around this area. Then we provide you with, we've built resources over the 5 years. We have a curriculum that is designed around, it's actually the only curriculum on the continent or probably in the world that's designed for doing assistive tech entrepreneurship in Africa. Because we take into consideration like the context, the challenges you'll face, how to go to market, how to test these products with users. So we give our entrepreneurs a lot of support to do something that most startups fail because they don't do, because they don't speak to the intended end user in the beginning. So for us, we involve people with disabilities end to end. When you're designing it, you interact with them. And then we also facilitate these entrepreneurs to get access to expertise or services that are not maybe readily available. If they're not available here, we will find it where it is available and we'll help you go do that design, patent, all that.
So what's the URL, and also how long is the call open for?
Yeah, so the current call is open for a month. So throughout April and maybe the first week of May. And you can go to at4d.org and you can be able to apply. Also on social media, look out for at4d on Instagram, LinkedIn, all the mainstream social medias, and you can be able to apply. And then we will be engaging, because the accelerator picks people who intend to build a company and they have an idea and they want support to make that happen. Our cohort is 6 months. It's a bit longer than regular cohorts, but that's because we put in a lot to make sure that this company can launch within the shortest time. But we have also started engaging students in universities and running innovation challenges just to create the awareness and the knowledge around disability, innovation, and the opportunities. We've done a hackathon recently with Huawei and the Huawei Academy in the universities. And we worked with KISE, who are the Kenya Institute for Special Needs Education, to do an innovation challenge for special needs education, but leveraging on AI. So we challenge these young minds. What can you do with AI to improve the education outcomes of people with disabilities?
I think there's a lot that can be done.
Yeah.
Like you say, if a car can see, I hadn't really thought about it that way.
Yeah.
So just to wind up, I know you were part of Innovate Kenya Tech Week.
Yeah.
What was that about? Like what was your involvement like, and what was your takeaway?
Yeah. So the Innovate Kenya Tech Week, I mean, the whole idea was to actually almost link the agenda of innovation with what different governments, even at county level, are trying to achieve through, it's all anchored on the Kenya Vision 2030. So there's a lot of promises we make on that document. And sometimes there's a dislocation between what's happening on the ground in terms of what are people innovating, how is it contributing to that?
Yeah, the beautiful paper.
Yeah, so I mean, I felt like that because it was really trying to bring those two worlds together. So we participated in a track, and this track was on inclusive innovation. And basically we came there to show how innovating in the disability sector or around disability is also contributing to Kenya's Vision 2030 and development, and why we need to double down on supporting disability innovation, because it's the one thing that actually makes, it's not just a right thing to do. Investing in assistive technology is a smart thing to do. Why? There's one of our partners, they're called Scale. We've done like an investment case for assistive technology. This is evidence research. And the case says that for every dollar invested in an economy for assistive technology, you can get $9 out. And it also says for an individual, let's say a child who gets access to assistive technology at the right time, you can improve their lifetime earnings by $100,000. Why? It's because it's all about meaningful participation. Yeah, like we need to get more people with disabilities into jobs, into education, because then you are reducing the imbalance we have where most of the people with disabilities are on social protection. Yet they are capable, like they can work in any industry as long as you empower them with the tools that they need. And one of those tools that's very important is assistive tech.
I'd like to explain assistive tech in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
Based on the conversation that you and I had prior to this. So I'm going to ask for, hi, can I have the crutch? So this is just a demonstration. We had a very long conversation about assistive tech and why it's so different for different people. So if you look at this is a crutch that I'm using. It looks nice. It says here, made in France. It's quite comfortable. But it's already making me lose some sensation in my hand simply because of how it's designed. Like you go to hospital, whatever your situation is, they're like, here's your crutch, use it to walk around. But now Bernard showed me that his crutches are made specifically for his condition. Now let him explain that. So when you explain, I'd like you to look at that camera.
Okay.
So explain how you use your crutches, the hands, what did you call this? The cuff. The cuff. The reflectors that you have. So assistive tech is so diverse. And I think this is a good example of that.
So very quickly and simply. So I have a crutch here. It's to a regular user, this is just another crutch, but there are features in this product that were made to respond to my needs as a user of crutches. I'm a long-time user, like lifetime user of crutches. So for example, my handle, this handle is shaped to fit my hand exactly size. So my grip is very comfortable and firm. The pressure points have been taken care of because this is a rubber material. And then the cuff, this is what we call the cuff in a crutch. You'll find that some are totally closed like this. Some are totally open like yours. So that also matters to the type of user. Like if you are someone who works in a high risk environment of, say, you could fall, either because you're a new crutch user, it's the first time, or you play amputee football. You will get a design like that is totally open, because the idea is that should you fall, it doesn't become a hazard. You can quickly let go of it. But if you are an expert crutch user like myself, who has used crutches since since kindergarten, you get a slightly open cuff. And this cuff is because when I'm communicating, sometimes, when I'm standing, sometimes I want to use my hands the same way I'd use my hands right now. When I do that, I don't want the crutch to fall. But it should also come off easily. So this has been designed to make that happen. Like removing it is very fast. Like it's just that I'm seated, but it's very easy to come out. You'll find there are so many other features here, like there's a reflector. This is for visibility and safety, maybe at night. Then there's adjustability and how firm that adjustability is. A lot of crutches will make noise when you step. And that's because, this part here, the hole is expanding slowly. And then, so all these things, basically, somebody had to sit down and design a crutch for a very specific use case. And there's a lot of opportunity to do that when it comes to assistive products. Sometimes it can be seen as this is custom design, so it's going to be more expensive, but actually not, because in the principle of, in the world of disability innovation, there's something called inclusive design. So you design every product and service for the broadest range of users or human abilities. And I'm sure if I gave you this scratch, you would find it equally comfortable. Like, it's not like it's been designed Bernard Chiira autographed. It's still like there's some elements of this that have been mass produced.
Yeah.
But they've thought of these different like scenarios.
No, I mean, what it revealed to me is that there's so many different uses.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about assistive tech, it's not one thing.
Yeah.
It's not a ramp. There's so many different aspects
Absolutely.
to assistive tech that I think now giving it that attention is very important.
Yeah.
But I think that's where we're going to wind up.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed having this conversation
Yeah.
with you, Bernard, because it really opens up our minds to the differences in society and how we need to create that equalizer the best that we can.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you very much. I hope you've heard about the website that you need to go to apply.
Absolutely.
If you want to be part of this cohort with 84D. And yeah, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening.